The rain had eased to a light drizzle, soft droplets tapping against the cafe's window like a gentle rhythm. Jules sat at the same table, his coffee now cold and untouched. The weight of Julie's departure lingered in the air, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. He stared at the empty chair across from him, replaying their conversation, dissecting every word. The chime of the doorbell startled him. His heart leapt as Julie walked back in, her coat damp from the rain. She paused in the doorway, her expression unreadable, before striding toward him. Jules rose instinctively, unsure of what to say. "I thought about what you said," Julie began, sliding into her seat. Her tone was measured, but her eyes betrayed the storm of emotions she carried. "And I need to say something too." Jules sat down slowly, his hands clasped together. "I'm listening," he said, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. Julie hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. "That night in my studio," she began, "when you pushed me to put my work out there, you weren't wrong." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "But you didn't understand how much fear I was carrying. Fear of failure. Fear of not being enough." Her words struck Jules like a blow. "Julie, I never wanted to make you feel that way," he said earnestly. "I just wanted you to see yourself the way I see you. Capable. Brilliant. Unstoppable." Julie's lips curved into a bittersweet smile. "You've always been my biggest supporter, Jules. But sometimes your faith in me feels overwhelming. Like a weight I can't live up to." The confession hung between them, raw and vulnerable. Jules leaned forward, his voice soft. "I never wanted to burden you, Julie. I only wanted to help you shine. But maybe I was so focused on pushing you forward that I forgot to stand by your side." Julie exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "I think we both made mistakes," she admitted. "I let my insecurities get in the way. And you, well, you've always been terrible at reading the room." Despite the tension, a small laugh escaped them both. It was tentative, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through a storm. "So where do we go from here?" Jules asked, his tone cautious but hopeful. Julie tilted her head, considering his question. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But maybe we start by being honest. About what we want. About what we're afraid of." Jules nodded, a flicker of determination in his eyes. "Then let's be honest now," he said. "I want us to try again. Not just as friends, but as partners. In everything." Julie didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached across the table, her hand brushing his. "I'm not ready to make promises," she said softly. "But I'm willing to try." The rain outside softened further, the clouds beginning to part. As they sat there, hands almost touching, the promise of something new hung in the air, a fragile but undeniable hope. The park was quiet now, the morning air fresh and invigorating after the storm. Jules waited near the old bench where he and Julie had spent so many afternoons talking about their dreams. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their branches heavy with the remnants of the rain. He checked his watch again, his heart quickening at the thought of what was to come. A soft rustle of footsteps approached, and Jules turned, his breath catching when he saw Julie walking toward him. She was holding something in her hand, her face unreadable, but her steps steady. The sketchbook. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Jules said, his voice tight with anticipation. Julie stopped in front of him, her eyes searching his face before she finally spoke. "I wasn't sure either," she said, offering a small, tentative smile. "But I've thought a lot about what we said. And I think we both owe it to ourselves to see where this can go." Her words were gentle but firm, like the first rays of sun breaking through dark clouds. She handed him the sketchbook. "I found this last night," she said quietly. "I thought you should have it back." Jules took the sketchbook, his fingers brushing against hers. It felt like the simplest touch, but it carried a weight that words couldn't express. He opened it slowly, revealing the pages filled with sketches of him, capturing fleeting moments of laughter, of thought, of connection. Each line, each stroke, was a testament to the bond they had once shared. "I thought you stopped drawing me," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Julie shook her head, her eyes softening. I never stopped. I just stopped believing it meant anything. She paused, taking a deep breath. But maybe it does. Maybe it always did. Jules closed the sketchbook and set it down on the bench, his heart full but uncertain. Julie, Don't say it, she interrupted gently, placing a hand on his arm. We don't need grand declarations. We just need to be honest with each other. About where we've been. And where we want to go. A silence passed between them, comfortable, yet filled with unspoken understanding. The weight of their past mistakes hung in the air, but it no longer felt suffocating. There was room for something new, something they had both been too afraid to embrace before. Julie finally spoke, her voice steady. I don't know where this will lead, Jules. But I'm willing to try. To take it slow. To see what happens. Jules smiled, a sense of relief flooding through him. Then let's start there, he said, his tone filled with quiet determination. They stood together, their shoulders nearly brushing, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the future didn't seem so uncertain. With each step they took side by side, the world felt a little bit more possible. As they walked away, the sky above them began to clear, the sun casting long shadows on the path ahead. The storm had passed, but the promise of something new, something worth fighting for, was just beginning to unfold. It was one of those nights when the world seemed quieter than usual. The sound of Julie's paintbrushes scraping against the canvas was the only noise in the room. The studio was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the desk lamp, casting shadows that danced across the walls. I stood at the doorway, watching her with a growing sense of helplessness. She was focused, lost in her art, and yet I couldn't help but feel the distance between us, a distance I had created and now couldn't seem to cross. I had come to this moment with such certainty, such control. But now, as I watched her, I realized I had never been in control at all. I had spent so long pretending, shaping myself into someone I thought she would want, that I had lost sight of the person I truly was. The walls I had built to protect myself had only made things worse. And now, Julie, so open, so sincere, had started to see the cracks. She knew something wasn't right. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, breaking my thoughts. There was something about the way she looked at me that made my chest tighten. She wasn't angry, nor was she hurt, at least, not in the way I expected. There was only curiosity, and something deeper. Something searching. I've been thinking, Julie said, setting down her brush and wiping her hands on her apron. About us. My heart skipped a beat, and I felt the familiar walls rising up inside me, the instinct to protect myself kicking in. But this time, I didn't want to hide. I couldn't keep lying to her, not anymore. About what? I asked, my voice coming out hoarse. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes never leaving mine. About you. About what you're afraid to tell me. The words hung in the air, each one heavier than the last. I could feel the pressure building inside me, the urge to confess, to spill everything I had kept hidden. But I couldn't. Not yet. I told you. I'm just not sure how to explain it, I said, my words falling flat even to my own ears. Julie stepped closer, her presence both comforting and terrifying. She had always been the one who could see past the masks people wore, and now, I was afraid she would see through mine too. I had tried to convince myself that I could keep her at arm's length, but the more time we spent together, the more I realized how much I needed her. Not just for validation, but for something deeper, something I hadn't expected. She reached out, placing a hand gently on my arm, and for a moment, I thought I might break. I had been holding everything inside for so long, afraid of what would happen if I let go, if I let myself be seen. I'm not asking you to be perfect, Jules, she said softly. I just want to know you. All of you. Not the parts you think I want to see. Her words were like a lifeline, but they also scared me more than anything else. She wasn't asking for some grand gesture or elaborate confession. She was asking for the truth. And the truth was, I didn't know if I was ready to give it. I didn't know if I was ready to face what I had become, what I had been hiding from myself all along. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The fear that had been suffocating me, the fear of rejection, of being exposed for who I truly was still too strong. Julie didn't let go. Her fingers tightened on my arm, grounding me, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could let her in. Maybe, despite everything, I could be honest. "I'm scared," I whispered, barely above a breath. "I've been scared for so long." Her gaze softened, and she took a step closer, her forehead gently resting against mine. "Then we'll face it together," she said, her voice a whisper in the stillness. In that moment, I knew I was at a crossroads. I could continue to hide, to cling to my fears, or I could take the leap and risk everything for a chance at something real. But as her warmth enveloped me, I realized the choice wasn't as simple as I had once thought. Julie wasn't just someone I wanted validation from anymore. She had become someone I was terrified of losing. And the only way to keep her was to stop pretending, to let her see the real me, for better or worse. The heart of the story was about to unfold, and I didn't know if I was strong enough to face it. But there was one thing I knew for certain. I couldn't keep running from myself forever. The rain had stopped, leaving the city bathed in the cool calm of early morning. A light fog hovered over the streets, adding an air of uncertainty to the world outside. Inside Julie's studio, time felt suspended. I stood there, still feeling the warmth of her touch on my arm, trying to find the courage to take the next step. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but I had never been good at saying them. Not when it mattered most. Julie was still close, her presence comforting yet full of unspoken expectation. Her eyes were soft, but I could sense the weight of her patience, waiting for me to be honest. The silence stretched, and in it, the years of self-deception and fear threatened to break me. "I've been lying to myself," I said, the words falling out in a rush. "For so long, I convinced myself I could just be whoever I thought you wanted me to be. I thought I could change, be the person who was enough for you. But now I don't know who I am anymore." Julie's gaze remained steady, but there was no judgment in her eyes, only understanding. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the trembling in my chest. This was it, the moment I had feared, the moment I could no longer hide. "I came to you, Julie, not with the intention of love, but of something else," I continued, my voice cracking. "I wanted to get close to you, to be with you, because I thought I could make myself whole by having you. I didn't care about the consequences. I didn't care about your heart. I just wanted validation." The words tasted bitter as they left my mouth. I had never allowed myself to admit how selfish my motives had been. But standing here now, with her looking at me like this, I knew I couldn't undo it. The truth was too big to swallow, too real to ignore. For a long moment, Julie didn't say anything. Her eyes searched mine, as though weighing every word, every admission I had made. The room seemed too small, too suffocating, and I could feel the weight of every mistake I had made. Finally, she spoke, her voice low but clear. "And now?" she asked, her expression unreadable. "What do you want now?" Her question hit me harder than I expected. What did I want now? The truth was, I didn't have an answer. Not a clean one. I could still feel the fear clawing at my insides, threatening to pull me away from her once again. But there was something else, something new, that I couldn't ignore. A spark, a flicker of hope I hadn't dared to acknowledge until now. "I want to be with you, Julie," I said, the words coming more easily now. "Not because of what I can get from you, but because I need you. Not as an escape, not as a way to fix myself, but because you make me feel like I could be more than what I've been. You make me feel like I'm worth something." Her gaze softened, her lips curving into a faint but genuine smile. She stepped forward, her hand gently brushing mine. "I don't know what this will look like," she said quietly. "But I think we both need to stop pretending." I nodded, the weight of her words settling in. There was no neat ending here, no perfect solution. Only the messy, uncertain beginning of something real. Something that wasn't about fixing past mistakes, but about learning how to be honest with each other and with ourselves. As we stood there, side by side, I realized the leap I had taken wasn't just toward her. It was toward the truth, toward a future where I could be honest, vulnerable, and, for the first time, whole. There was still so much left to figure out, but for now, I knew that we were finally on the same page. And that, in itself, was enough to keep moving forward. The door to her studio creaked open, and for the first time in a long while, the world outside seemed full of possibility.